Humans are social creatures. It's a cliche we've heard countless times. The truth of this cliche is clear when we consider that social deprivation is used as a form of punishment. We give children timeouts when they misbehave, and solitary confinement is the ultimate punishment for prisoners. Accepting this, we have to ask, why would anyone willingly adopt a life of social isolation? It's almost impossible for most of us to imagine a single day passing without interacting with another person, and yet hermits and recluses often become subjects of deep fascination. The earliest accounts of voluntary isolation come from early Christian hermits that lived circa the 4th century AD. The word hermit derives from the Greek word eremites, meaning of the desert. Known as the first monk, Anthony the Great left behind his village and confined himself within a ruin in the deserts west of the Nile River. His commitment to faith inspired an entire movement of solitary asceticism called desert theology. Anthony was said to have been waging a battle against the temptations and abuses of demons. In medieval Europe, a number of particularly devout Christians became anchorites. These people lived within a permanently sealed cell that was adjoined with the wall of a church. Small windows provided the only access to the outside world. Anchorites committed their lives to prayer and provided religious counsel to those who would seek it. Stylites made a show of their faith by living on top of pillars, preaching, praying, and fasting for extended periods. Many faiths share the concept of distinct physical and spiritual worlds, and thus one can find many examples around the world of the devoted relinquishing their worldly possessions to better tend to spiritual concerns. Though powerful, faith is certainly not the only reason people become hermits and recluses. Others seeking solitude may seek to form a closer bond with nature by breaking their bond with society. Henry David Thoreau viewed a close relationship with nature as a virtue in and of itself. In 1845, Thoreau began living a life of self-reliance and relative solitude on Walden Pond, writing about his experiences and ultimately publishing several books around the subject. This work contributed greatly to the philosophical movement of transcendentalism. The North Pond hermit, Christopher Thomas Knight, lived as a recluse in Maine's Belgrade Lakes area for 27 years. He disappeared into the woods in 1986 at age 20 and said goodbye to no one. He survived the harsh winters by burglarizing nearby camps for supplies. Since his capture, he has expressed a fondness for solitude, but struggles to explain his departure any further. It may well be the case that the majority of isolated people are those who are sequestered in their homes. Domestic recluses can include people suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, or people with disabilities. For many people, society and the wilderness prove to be equally hostile environments. In Japan, a hyper-competitive work culture and the pressures of conformity, among other factors, have given rise to an epidemic of reclusive behavior. Hikikomori are adults who have withdrawn from mainstream expectations around career goals and social lifestyles, spending months to years at home. This trend can be observed in other developed countries facing economic stagnation and aging populations. Is there something inherently limiting or corrupting about living in our communities? Some of the greatest minds and artists have spent extended periods of time in solitude, developing their master works. Maybe isolation is actually necessary for certain people to live up to their full potential. For others, perhaps asking them to explain their reasons for seeking seclusion is asking too much. We can't expect everyone to emerge from isolation with some great new insight into the human condition. We can, however, consider the various ways that we are compelled or inspired to engage with society and how our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are shaped by that interaction.
By order of the Circuit Court, you are hereby designated as a juror. Failure to appear may result in sanctions by the court. It is easy to forget how important the jury is to our American society. The right to be a juror is one of the rights guaranteed to all eligible citizens. The right to a trial by jury helped spark the American Revolution. This right is the only right that appears both in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. For some, jury duty can seem like a burden. It is important to remember that jury duty represents what we believe about America. That it is localized, it is democratic, and that you will be representing your community. You, as jurors, must decide this case based solely on the evidence presented here within the four walls of this courtroom. This means that during the trial you must not conduct any independent research about this case, the matters in the case, and the individuals or corporations involved in the case. In other words, you should not consult dictionaries or reference materials, search the internet, websites, blogs, or use any other electronic tools to obtain information about this case or to help you decide the case. Please do not try to find out information from any source outside the confines of this courtroom. I know that many of you use cell phones, Blackberries, the internet and other tools of technology. You also must not talk to anyone about this case or use these tools to communicate electronically with anyone about the case. This includes your family and friends. You may not communicate with anyone about the case on your cell phone, through email, BlackBerry, iPhone, text messaging, or on Twitter, through any blog or website, through any internet chat room, or by way of any other social networking websites, including Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, and YouTube. During your deliberations, you must not communicate with or provide any information to anyone by any means about this case. You may not use any electronic device or media, such as a telephone, cell phone, smartphone, iPhone, BlackBerry or computer, the internet, any internet service, or any text or instant messaging service, or any internet chat room, blog, or website such as Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, YouTube or Twitter, to communicate to anyone any information about this case or to conduct any research about this case until I accept your verdict. Since this is a high-profile case, you and your peers will be fully sequestered until a decision is made. Throughout this process, you may find yourself tempted to become amicable with your fellow jurors. Please resist this temptation, as you should not be influenced by groupthink. Remember, being sequestered requires isolation. You may experience symptoms of anxiety, stress, depression, or generally negative feelings. Some extreme effects may include self-harm and thoughts of suicide.
You won't survive out there. Do you know what it's like to be self-arrested? It's hard to explain, and it's harder to understand if it hasn't happened to you. After all, depression has only just started being normalized. We've come a long way from the days where my melancholy would be blamed on a disturbance in my soul or an excess of black bile. Even 10 years ago, this was too taboo to really talk about. You have nothing to be sad about. You have a great life. Just be happy. But to my mind, reality doesn't rule, and I can't control my perception. I know how it looks, like I'm lazy and apathetic. My mind has built a mountain that I'm wedged underneath, and it's too heavy to push off. I'm buried beneath my guilt, loneliness, and excuses, and I wish I could leave, but I can't. If I had a choice, I would be happy, but I don't. If I had a choice, I would get out of bed. I would leave my house. I would see my friends. But sometimes it hurts too much to move. So if you distance from me, I don't blame you. You wouldn't be the first. Nobody likes to stick around the sad person, and it's not easy to know what to say or do to help me. Keep yourself busy, they say. Just turn your pain into something productive. I guess they think that just anyone can become the next Van Gogh, or even that they should. But don't they know that Vincent shot himself at 37? If I was Francesca Woodman, I would already be gone. But I'm just one of Hopper's Nighthawks, quietly going through the motions. Why am I expected to produce the next great masterpiece on the other side of this thing? Does the other side of this thing even exist? Let me ask you something else. What are you doing now that you're stuck inside? Have you ever spent so much time with yourself before? Have you kept yourself busy and used your time for something productive? Or have you all become Nighthawks too?